Hey Weasleys, this is Emily and you're watching The Burrow. So recently I received a few questions about animation and drawing and stuff like that, and I thought I could answer them in a video. So the first group of questions comes from a subscriber by the name of Pepperfrost. So thank you very much for your questions and allowing me to answer them in this video. First, they ask, how do animation teams work, the process and such? So an animation studio is split up into different departments, and each department starts at a time so that they can provide their artwork or their animation to the next department that will need it. So for example, I worked in backgrounds, so that means that I was around the third group to start. And by start, I mean begin work on each episode. So first we would have to receive the script from the script writers, then the storyboarders would create a storyboard from that, and then we take the storyboard and we create the background drawings and color in the backgrounds in our department. And once those are completed, they move on to the setup department. So setup is something that exists in digital animation. I don't believe it existed in traditional animation, but I don't know because I've never worked in a traditional studio. So what setup does is they put all the elements that are needed into a scene. So they put the sound files, the storyboard, the character builds, the backgrounds, and anything else that I've needed, props and stuff like that. And around the same time, the builds are happening. So builds refer to the actual characters that all the animators use in digital animation. In 3D animation, I think they say rigs instead of builds. I used to work in builds as well, so we would start early on in pre-production. So pre-production means everything that happens before the animation starts. So builds usually start early on in the process as well. They need the storyboard to see what characters will be needed, and the builds are created from official character designs. So all the designs and everything happen early on as well. For us, we had clients, so they would send us the script, storyboard, and the character designs, as well as sometimes location designs. Those happen all very early on in the process, depending on what the actual production is, if it's coming from a client or if it's owned by the studio. And then the animation is done. Animation is usually the largest department. There's anywhere from 10 to 50 animators working on a television show usually. After that's done, the animation goes into the effects animation. So at my studio, we had a separate effects department. I know in some studios, the animators have to draw their own effects, but I think generally now they have animators who specialize in doing hand-drawn effects. So even though we did digital animation, the effects were hand-drawn. And once all of that has come together, everything is in the scene, everything is animated, it goes to compositing. So what compositing does is they basically make sure everything looks good in the scene, there's no mistakes in it. They add any more effects that they might need to using a program called After Effects or some other editing program. Then the whole show is cut together and it's sent out. I hope that wasn't too confusing. So the next question from Pepperfrost is, do you know how much it costs to create and finish a project? Well, it depends on the size of the project. Bigger clients like Disney or DreamWorks, they will have a bigger budget because they want to have a very good final product. So I don't know any exact amounts because I was never in charge of handling budgets for animation, but I know that a lot of shows are in the many millions of dollars for the complete budget for a season, and that sounds like a lot of money, but that amount is split up between hundreds of people who are working on the show, managing the people working on it. I know that Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra have the highest TV budget of all time in animation, I think. If you look at any of Disney's channels like Disney XD, they have shows that are very high budget, and they're usually done domestically in the US and Canada. Oftentimes lower budget shows are sent overseas to Korea, the Philippines, and China, and where the labor is much cheaper. You can often tell by the amount of animation in the show. So by that I mean the amount of still frames used, how much the characters are moving around and acting. The higher quality of the animation usually means it's a much higher budget. And they're wondering if they should go to an art school or if they can get the experience they need through internships and connections and working on their own projects. You can definitely get the experience that you need by working your butt off. You'll have to be able to compete with students graduating from the big art schools. So in order to do that, you really have to work hard and put yourself out there. You can't just lock yourself in your room and work on your own stuff for years and then expect to have the same sort of connections as someone coming out of school. The studios often go to schools to recruit students before they even graduate. I know that art school is really, really expensive in the United States. In some particular places, it is the same cost as getting a law degree, which is so ridiculous to me because working as an animator or an artist, the chances of you ever paying that debt back is very, very low. So I totally understand where that kind of hesitation comes from. For me, art school was the best experience of my life. In Canada, it's a lot cheaper to get a certificate rather than a degree. I know it's much different in the United States. I think every school gives you a degree. So my total debt at the end of school was $33,000 Canadian, and I managed to get some bursaries at the end of school. So you definitely have a lot of options because now there are a lot of online schools. Though they are not cheap, they are a lot more affordable than going to university. So I don't know which country you live in, but if you live in a country where there is free education, 1000% you should go for it. But if you live in the United States, then you would be wise to explore your options. You might have a hard time getting an official intern position without being in school because, again, those companies look to the schools to recruit people for those positions. But you said you're only 14 now, so you have a lot of time to think about it and a lot of time to build a kind of online persona. Everyone has an online portfolio now, and a lot of companies like to see your own imagination and creative abilities, so having a personal project like a comic or a storybook or just an ongoing illustration series really can showcase that. So learn as much as you can, which you are doing right now by reaching out to us on The Burrow. Good luck to you, and thank you so much for your questions. The next questions come from a subscriber named Farouk Music. They say, I am a bit nervous going into art school and your art made me question if I am ready yet. I am good at animated drawing, or so I thought until I stumbled upon your channel. Well, thank you, but in all honesty, you probably aren't ready for art school. I definitely wasn't. And that's because going from high school to art school where you will be drawing full-time is so completely different. The amount you'll improve just within the first semester will totally amaze you. Almost everyone in my first semester class, including myself, were really bad at drawing. The expectations for students going into animation are quite low. They don't require you to be a master professional level artist going into college. You have to remember that you're going to college to learn how to do this thing. So don't put so much pressure on yourself. Go ahead and apply. It's not gonna hurt, and I'm willing to bet you'll get in if you do draw often now and if you can demonstrate that you have some potential to learn. Also, you left your comment on my animation and design assignments, which were from my second year and some from my third year too. So also keep that in mind. They're not the assignments I did on like the first day of class when I was 17 years old. They were from when I was 19 and 20 and I had been in school for a few years, and so I had been drawing for like 10 hours or more every single day. So yes, I was garbage when I first started in animation school. That's just the reality, so don't put so much pressure on yourself. They asked, how did you learn how to draw your characters so perfectly, even in different poses? That is from life drawing. Well, thank you for saying it's perfect. It's very far from being perfect, but that is from life drawing, and I know I have kind of stressed this point before, but life drawing is so essential for learning how to draw characters. So once you learn to draw from real life, you can then exaggerate or simplify the human body, and you'll also see how the human body works and just observe people in real life, even when you're not in a life drawing class. So you can observe people, how they walk, how they run, sit, stand, eat, talk, do anything. Just try to train your mind to sort of observe people, and eventually it'll sink in and it'll start translating to the page. They asked, are you self-taught or did you watch videos on how to draw 3D, etc.? I'm not self-taught. I went to animation school for 4 years. Both of my parents are creative. They both work with their hands. My mom went to school for fashion design, so I guess they kind of passed on that natural creative sense to me. And I didn't really watch any videos. YouTube just became a thing my first year of college, and all that was on YouTube were like a few music videos. I learned how to draw sort of technically or 3D from my design teacher and just practicing, and my design teacher always taught us to think about how something was built. So if you're drawing like a character's hand with a sleeve on it, the sleeve will have dimension to it. It's going around the arm, so you have to make sure to draw like an extra edge in there to show that the cloth has thickness and that it's kind of like folding around itself. And just to keep that in mind whenever you're drawing like a chair or a door Tumblr or anything like that is that it's a 3D object existing in space. So if you just add that one little extra line that gives it sort of like an edge, then it'll kind of make it look more believable. And this type of thing is really hard to explain without drawing it for you. They asked, what school did you go to? I went to Algonquin College. The program there is 3 years, but I ended up repeating the last year because the last year you work on your own animated film, and it was really important to me to finish, and at the time I didn't feel ready to leave school and go out into the real world, so I talked to my professors about it and we agreed that I could repeat the year, and I ended up doing really, really well after I repeated the year. They also have a pre-animation program, so if you don't get into animation, you should apply to pre-animation at the same time. So pre-animation accepts anyone. You can go in and you learn the fundamentals of drawing, and you're basically guaranteed after pre-animation to get into the animation program. What have you been up to lately? I know you said you're going to Japan for a bit. How's that coming along? Well, I did go to Japan. I went to Japan for 3 weeks and I vlogged the trip, so that's up on my main channel, Hikipedia, and I've been back for a couple months now, and I've been working on my comic called Kingdom Come, and that will be coming out this month in August. I'll definitely be talking about that more on The Burrow when it does come out, and I'm starting a new job in September, so I'll be working part-time on that as well as my comic, and yeah, everything's going really well right now. They said, I feel like you were good enough to work at a huge studio like Disney. Well, thank you very much for saying that. I actually did work for Disney TV as a client, and I worked for them for 6 or 7 years. However, I did apply to get into the Disney movie studios in California twice, and I did not get in. Thank you for your confidence, but no, I'm not good enough to get in there. The competition level to get in at the big feature film studios is extremely, extremely high, and since they are such big studios with so much money, they can pull all of the best artists from all over the world. There's also big art schools in California where all the studios are, so they tend to recruit a lot of students from that local area. So it's really hard for me. First, although I do know someone who I went to school with who works in Disney Future now, he worked his butt off to get in there, and he wasn't even that serious about drawing when he first started animation. So that's just another example of how if you work hard, even if you aren't the best in the class at the beginning of the first year, you could make it to Disney, you know, a few years down the road. I applied to have a mentor at Pixar and at Disney after I graduated, and I was not accepted either. So again, thank you for your vote of confidence, but don't be intimidated by seeing other people's art, especially if you're still in high school or you're just starting out in college or something. It takes time to get any type of skill. So those are all the questions from Farouk. Thank you guys so much for asking me these questions, and if you have any other questions related to these subjects, you can let me know in the comments down below. I'll be more than happy to answer them in another Q&A video if I get a few more. In the meantime, you can like the Facebook page for Kingdom Come if you would like to get updates for how that's coming along. Make sure you subscribe to The Burrow if you haven't already. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.
Hey everyone, this is Charlie and you're watching The Burrow. So today I thought it'd be fun to do another 10-minute writing challenge. I haven't done one since, well, what was it? Horses? Alone in the Woods? I think Alone in the Woods was the last one. This time I went to Twitter, put up a couple ideas and put it to you guys in a poll. To be honest, I was kind of hoping for either World Ruled by Trump or Puppy with Superpowers because, well, Puppy with Superpowers in particular sounds awesome. So yeah, let's get started.